We realized that we were more of a luxury brand than a lot of the competitors that were coming in, undercutting us. So, instead of trying to compete on price, we actually raised our prices and leaned more into luxury positioning. My gut tells me that if something's priced higher, consumers are going to value it more.
Imagine COVID hits, you have 11 wellness centers and you have to shut them all down and pivot to a product business. That's exactly what happened to Katie at HigherDose, and she has managed to build one of the best wellness tech businesses in the world. They're in all Sephoras, they're all over America selling their wellness products. This is a great episode. We talk about how to build a business with debt and some of the challenges in doing that. We talk about brand as an outcome and a feeling and how it helped HigherDose really differentiate in a very noisy marketplace. We talk about how to think about creating and launching new products and how to evaluate them post-launch. Katie shares a ton of wisdom. This is a great episode. Ladies and gentlemen, Katie from HigherDose. Katie, welcome to What to Do Next. Really excited to have you here.
Good to see you, David. Thanks for having me.
Before we jump into all those pivotal moments in the business, tell us a little bit about sort of HigherDose, how it started, and where it is now.
Sure. So HigherDose is a wellness tech company. We launched in New York City in 2016 as infrared sauna spa locations. We bootstrapped our first location with $100,000. And from there, we raised a small seed round of $1.2 million, opened some additional locations. And then along the way, we launched our infrared sauna blanket, which was the first at-home product we're famous for. And then when the pandemic hit, we really pivoted into a product business. And now we offer all different types of red light therapy, PEMF, infrared sauna devices. And we're carried in Sephora, Nordstrom, Blue Mercury. We're on Amazon, and we're about halfway to 9 figures. So it's been an exciting journey.
Take us back to the early days. So you got $100,000.
Yeah.
What do you do first?
As a female founder and having another female co-founder, it was a real challenge to raise capital. So it took us actually about a year just to raise $100,000 of friends and family money, which was definitely challenging and kind of tested our commitment. But because we only had a small amount of capital to work with, we had to get really resourceful with how we launched. So what we ended up doing is instead of opening our own location, we partnered with an existing wellness center and opened as a space within a space. We rented out 3 massage rooms, leased saunas, put them in the rooms, but made the design really cool, made a really artistic website, had a cool name for the brand. And we got started by just inviting our own network of wellness influencers, models, athletes in, got them to post from our location, and we were able to really get things going on just a little bit of capital by being really resourceful.
At this point, you have no product. This is you're basically opening a spa.
Correct. Yeah. Brick and mortar, no product, just dealing with, rent, equipment,
right,
employees. So we started off totally different than a product business.
Wow. Okay. So this is going along. I think you started to get more stores within stores.
Yeah. I mean, because people loved infrared so much, which is what we were betting on, we developed a cult following overnight. And after we launched our first location, about 2 or 3 months after that, ABC Home and Carpet, which is an iconic, furniture retail in New York, approached us about opening there because they always wanted to somehow bring infrared to their client base. And they actually built out a location for us within the store. And that location got super busy as well. So at that point, we had enough kind of data and proof points to approach investors about getting some more capital to continuing open space within spaces. We opened at the 11 Howard Hotel. We opened in 8 Equinox locations. And then we also opened our own standalone location in Williamsburg after that.
So you're managing these locations. Tell me a little bit more about how they're set up. Like you have infrared saunas, so you have CapEx. And then you have massage therapists as well?
We didn't have any massage therapists at that time. What we really wanted to do was find a kind of a business model that had really simple, straightforward unit economics that was easy to run. So, tons of places have infrared saunas now, but back in 2016, this was a novel idea. And what we really wanted to do was take the idea of like a tanning salon where you have a bunch of rooms with equipment. and then just one or maybe two front desk people managing the rooms so that you don't have a lot of overhead or a lot of employees to manage. So that was really the model. Think tanning salon, but with infrared saunas.
Cool. So low CapEx, low labor, easy to manage. And so you scaled this up to how many?
We built it up to 11.
And at this point, you're not thinking product. I don't leave after my infrared sauna and see a bunch of HigherDose items on my way out. There's nothing like that. It's just a pure, we buy equipment, we build it out. You come in, you use the equipment, you go and you pay us for it.
Yeah. I mean, we were such a kind of like lean, scrappy team that I really wanted it to be like, keep it simple, stupid. I think the most complicated thing we introduced was maybe like selling coconut waters at the checkout. So that was the extent of it. Probably about a year and a half after we opened our first location, we just were constantly getting asked to do pop-up events. And we realized we couldn't lug around a 500-pound sauna for a 2-day event. So that's how we came up with our sauna blanket. Back in 2017, we were looking around at some kind of portable sauna solution that was on the market that we could use. And we didn't really find anything that we were happy with. So we connected with our advisors at Clearlight, which is the #1 infrared sauna company in the US. And they had about 25 years of experience working with manufacturers in Asia on infrared products. So we worked with them to design this sauna blanket for pop-up events. And it was so popular that everybody was just asking if they could buy them off of us. So we really didn't know anything about e-commerce or, starting a product company. We just thought, okay, well, let's order, 50 or 100 of these sauna blankets and see if we can sell them out to our email list. And sure enough, they sold out. So we started to place bigger orders, and then we ended up hiring like a digital marketing person to help with Facebook ads. And we started off, the product side of the business, really small, really based on organic demand. And then we saw that it just kept growing. So eventually we pivoted more in that direction.
Hi, I'm David. I'm the president of HighBeam. But before that, I built a brand called David's Tea from 0 to 200 million in sales, and I took it public on the NASDAQ. HighBeam is a banking and cash management platform for consumer brands. It's the bank I wish I had when I was building David's Tea. We'll turn banking from a cost center for you today into a profit center for you tomorrow. We'll make you better cash back on ad spend. We'll maximize your yield on idle working capital through daily automated sweeps. And we have a host of AI-powered tools to save you a boatload of time. Check us out at highbeam.com and let's talk. So the sauna blanket was there to help you promote your wellness centers, basically. You were using it for pop-up events to say, hey, infrared sauna is amazing, try it out with this blanket, and then come to our actual centers.
Yeah, totally. And then it ended up being a happy accident that it became our hero product.
At this point, though, is your pitch to yourselves, we now have 11 of these centers open. We're going to have, 100 or 1,000, or is sauna blanket sort of a side project and you're thinking I'm going all in on these wellness centers?
I mean, that was the original pitch to our investors, but along the way, when we were opening our first wholly owned location in Williamsburg, we discovered so many challenges with having standalone locations, like the plumbing, the permitting, getting the right contractors. It was literally such a headache opening locations, and we didn't have any experience or background in retail design or construction. So we made tons of mistakes, lost a lot of money on that. And then even with the space within a space locations, like as you start to add more front desk staff and more equipment, it got to be like a real headache to manage them. And then meanwhile, we are kind of, watching our little first Shopify store just collecting money, and we were getting like a really high ROAS on our ad spend. So we did kind of think to ourselves, like, it seems like this is maybe naturally more the way to go product. And then the pandemic kind of accelerated all that for us.
You're on the edge. You're not sure which direction to go in. But it sounds like beyond the one that you did on your own, the store within the store model, that was profitable for you, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it depended on the location. Obviously, the more units that we could have in one location, the more profitable it was. We had a great partnership with Equinox where they put us in 8 locations, but the only challenge there is they only gave us 2 rooms. So we could only have two saunas at each of those locations, but we needed a full-time staff member there managing them. So those locations were significantly less profitable than certain locations that had 5 or 6 saunas, but it was still great for brand awareness. But yes, in general, that was, a profitable model.
I built David Segal. We had 200 retail doors. So I get retail. I like retail. We were able to streamline and systematize how you build out a store, what you look for before you take the lease, how to hire, how to structure your store operations so that you have your district managers and regional managers. And we learned all that the hard way, right? I mean, we made all the mistakes and we grew through it. It sounds like you had the economics of a business that would work at retail and be able to scale. You also had this product business that was starting to work for you. I mean, you had 2 basically business models in one. What made you decide I want to go into product? Was it an economic decision or was it just a personal, I gravitate more towards this, I'm more curious about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a couple different factors. Like I mentioned, we only raised 1.2 million. So we didn't have, this huge VC check where we could kind of operate a bunch of different business models at the same time. I think if we would have raised 10 million, maybe we would have done all the locations plus the product simultaneously. But just with limited resources, we sort of had to pick a lane. And then, I think ultimately our goal was to get infrared out to the masses. And we felt like at-home product was the quickest way of doing that. So I think it was a mix of personal interest and just expanding as rapidly as we could, capital constraints. And then, of course, the pandemic kind of forced our hand because when the pandemic hit, we had to shut down all of our locations and the demand for the sauna blankets skyrocketed. So that kind of pushed us in the product direction pretty rapidly.
On the surface, you'd think the pandemic was a real what to do next moment, but it sounds like you were already leaning towards a D2C sauna blanket, infrared sauna blanket business. Pandemic just was almost the perfect storm for you in a sense, right? Like it made the decision easy.
Actually, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, we were already leaning that direction. Our leases at Equinox were about to expire about a month after the pandemic hit. So it just really was kind of like a natural transition that we were leaning towards anyway.
And was this instant? Like what's going through your head? Like, the world shuts down. We all remember it. Are you thinking, oh God, we're screwed. All my studios and years of hard work are gone? Or are you thinking, man, we'll be fine. Sales are already starting to pop on this product online?
Yeah, I mean, luckily we were already selling the product online and had the supply chain set up and some inventory. And we literally saw the demand skyrocket overnight. So I thought, well, okay, thank goodness we diversified and had these products to sell. We even had some, investors that we'd spoken to in the past reach out right when the pandemic hit and wanted to initiate conversations again, because I think they sensed the sauna blankets were going to take off, which they did.
And what'd you do in that moment? Did you say, okay, let's go make hay, the sun's out, we're going to raise as much money as we can? Or were you guys very cautious?
We were pretty cautious. I mean, I think it was a moment of trepidation, right at the beginning of 2020. For just the markets and investors in general. And luckily, because, we had the history of running our sauna spas and we had, revenue to show for that, we were able to access working capital loans that financed our inventory. And that was really the quickest way to kind of like fund the product business. And we could get loans with the click of a button. So we just did that and went off to the races.
Looking back on it, would you do it the same way?
Oh, absolutely. I probably would have just tried to move even faster and get more loans.
And why debt over equity?
I think like a lot of founders in the early days, I think there's a certain amount of cachet associated with like raising big rounds and it's very newsworthy. And we did originally, want to raise more funds, but the valuations that we were getting from investors just weren't compelling. Meanwhile, it was so easy for us to raise debt. And then we realized like, hey, actually, this is great. Like we're maintaining more control of the business. We're still able to grow and we can keep things really streamlined with a really clean cap table.
The lending products you're talking about are merchant cash advances. They're certainly not inexpensive. Did it matter to you at that moment, or your economics were so good, the ROAS was so good that you weren't even looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, back then, the ROAS on Facebook was so good and the unit economics were so great that it didn't really matter. And, interest expense goes against what you owe in taxes. So we kind of just took the hit and we're like, all right, our interest rate's kind of high, but we're maintaining our equity and we're able to get the growth that we want to see. So we just kind of like plowed forward.
Was there a moment where the record kind of stopped on that?
Well, I think things started to get more challenging a couple years ago when the Facebook algorithm changed, right? Marketing got a lot more expensive, more competitors started to enter the space. It pushed us to get, more, I would say, precise with our creative and really like A/B test what was working. And, it pushed us to be better marketers and more analytical with our paid media. And it also made us take a look at revisit the unit economics of our product. Because when we first launched the sauna blanket, we weren't really sophisticated product business founders. So we just kind of threw out a price that seemed to make sense to us. But as marketing costs got more expensive, we revisited our pricing. We also looked at, the business and the brand that we'd been building in New York City for many years. And we realized that we were more of a luxury brand than a lot of the, competitors that were coming in, undercutting us. So, instead of trying to compete on price, we actually raised our prices and leaned more into luxury positioning. And that allowed us to maintain our unit economics, even in the face of rising marketing costs.
Why is that so difficult? So, a lot of people would love to not compete on price. Talk us through how that decision was made and then what you did and what did you learn along the way that didn't work in order to arrive at a place that did?
In some ways, I've done a lot of business consulting in the past and I ran strategy for Tough Mudder and worked in investment banking. And I don't want to say I'm a one-trick pony, but a lot of times my gut tells me that if something's priced higher, consumers are going to value it more. And I had the conviction that a price increase for us was not going to, decrease volume. I felt that way because we'd already developed a cult following with celebrities and influencers. So we had this halo of influential people using the product. We had a really cool origin story of launching in New York, 2 female founders, which was great for getting a lot of press. So we already had tons of press exposure. We were at the head of all the SEO search results. So I felt confident that we had already built a luxury brand. We just weren't pricing it as such. And then when we pulled the trigger on the price increase, sure enough, we found that volume did not really decrease at all.
And this is at a time where more and more competition are flooding the markets. They're seeing what you're doing. And they're like, we can do that too. And they're undercutting you too.
Yeah, tons and tons. But I think that we have a really unique story as being like really the only wellness tech brand with 2 female founders. And we leaned into that. And we built like a whole other kind of like side content YouTube show called Biohack Hers, where we did an exploration into like 25 or 30 different health and wellness practices that were super cutting edge. And we talked about biohacking from a female point of view. So I think we tried to differentiate ourselves as female-led, more beauty biohacking than performance biohacking necessarily. And I think, having that brand point of difference helped us kind of maintain a certain positioning in the market that even if, people launch similar products, they were seen as kind of a different brand in the consumer's eyes.
It seems brand is quite important to you. What is a brand? How would you define it?
So the brand is, I think, in addition to our products really working, I mean, infrared and red light and PEMF are incredibly amazing and life-changing for people. I really think the brand is the most special thing about HigherDose. When we launched, I was looking at the health and wellness space, and most of it, centered around kind of like diet and exercise and a lot of messaging around what you should do. You should exercise this much and eat right. And I didn't want to have a brand identity that just kind of got lost in that space. My co-founder and myself were both kind of adrenaline junkies. Like, I was a former marathon runner, and I really loved infrared because I felt like it gave me a runner's high without doing anything. Like, all I had to do was sit in the infrared sauna, sweat for an hour, and I got this huge endorphin rush, right? The dose in our name stands for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, which are your four main happy chemicals. And our tagline was "Get High Naturally." So I think we created this brand concept around, hey, why don't you set a wellness goal of just feeling euphoric, like seeing what you can do to get high naturally. And I think that kind of like set us apart, as well as the creative that we launched with. I was adamant that I didn't want to have one photo of a sauna on our whole site. Instead, my co-founder and I used ourselves as models. We went up to the Hamptons and shot in nature, like being very free, kind of like half naked. And the website itself was very artsy. And I think that really appealed to like the cool downtown entertainment celebrity kind of following that we originally gained.
So if somebody's sitting here and they're trying to define what comes naturally to you, which is how to create a brand, how would you frame it? I mean, it sounds like the product experience and how you frame the outcome you're going to get from the product trump any type of design or, logo or name or anything else that when people think of brand, they sometimes think creative, but
Right.
You're describing it way different. You're describing it as a feeling, an outcome.
Correct. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I've always had the belief that raw emotions deep down are what drive people. So I think you've got to tap into people's emotions to create a strong brand. And that definitely goes above and beyond just, a color palette that looks appealing.
What would you have done if you felt you weren't tapping into those emotions early on?
I don't think I would have been able to speak to the brand and what we were doing quite as passionately. I think if we were just more of a clinical, like sweat in an infrared sauna, like, we're the hotbox.com and just kind of like led with like these more medical benefits, like lowers inflammation, helps with athletic recovery. I just don't think we would have gotten the attention from press or consumers in the way that we did. So I probably would have gotten a little bored with it, but I don't know if I would have stuck with it if it was more of a vanilla kind of brand.
And was that your litmus test early on? You're like, I have to be gung-ho about this all the time in order for it to be something that I believe we can be successful with. Because if I can't sell it, it's not going to fly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you encounter, this being a founder, you encounter so many different types of challenges along the way that you wouldn't foresee, like everything from employees and staffing to dealing with your investors to, things going on with your co-founder to product issues and cash flow issues. And it's just, plus you're, working your tail off doing podcasts, speaking events, actually running the company. Like, it's a real grind, and you don't get an immediate return on your efforts, right? Like, you've got to put a lot of years in before you actually get kind of like a cash return as a founder. So I think if I hadn't been passionate about it, there probably would have been moments where I would have just thought, hey, why don't I just go work in consulting or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned putting years into it. It's amazing you talked about doing podcasts and being sort of the outside promoter, while at the same time having to worry about all the financial issues, human resource, partnership issues, et cetera. What do you tell yourself in the moments? Because any one podcast doesn't move the needle. Any one marketing post or activity doesn't really do much. It's a compound effect. What do you tell yourselves in those moments in order to keep that fire going and be able to have the longevity that creates the impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the beginning, right, like it's all super exciting, especially like first time being a founder. You're kind of like, wow, I can't believe people want to talk to me or write about this or have me on this panel. So I think in the beginning, you kind of need to be humble and just say yes to most opportunities that come your way, especially if you're bootstrapped and you don't have like a huge marketing budget. I think it's good to just put yourself out there as much as you can. it helps that I was, 11 years younger when I started the company. So I had energy for all that. But then, along the ways you get more established. I think you have to get a little bit pickier about the speaking engagements that you choose, the appearances that you do, because obviously there's an opportunity cost of time and energy in terms of, other things that you could be doing that are super valuable, like flying to Asia and meeting with your suppliers, or, potentially raising money, or, recruiting great marketing people.
How do you do that? Do you have some kind of framework or just basic kind of mental model that you use to kind of decide, I'm going to do this in my time, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do this?
I think I kind of just go with my gut, right? Like when I get approached by really, specific brand name institutions like Women's Wear Daily or Milken Institute to speak, those are kind of no-brainers. Or if they're smaller rooms with like what I feel like are going to be the right people, like I spoke at TD Cohen at their, health and wellness investor conference back in February, or even like, going on QVC. Some stuff is just a no-brainer. And then, other things I'll do, maybe if they're smaller, just if it's something that I'm personally passionate about or that if I have a personal relationship with the person, I just kind of go with it and on a case by case basis. And, now of course it helps to have Claude or ChatGPT or whatever AI you use to kind of help you evaluate opportunities and gut check what you say yes to.
Katie, take us back. You guys, it's starting to go well. You're growing sales online. The ROAS is amazing. You're borrowing super expensive merchant cash advances, but the cash flow seems to be working out because you're getting such a big return on that first sale. Sephora comes knocking. What do you guys do?
Well, I mean, listen, in the beauty space, Sephora is kind of the holy grail, right? Like if you're starting any kind of beauty adjacent brand, you want to be partnered with them just because it's such a stamp of credibility. I think the consumer sees your affiliation with Sephora and it'll differentiate you in the sea of other, red light face masks or what have you. So, going with them was a no-brainer. I definitely think it was a learning curve, understanding, getting into retail and the cash conversion cycle there and some of the constraints that you don't have in D2C. But we all looked at each other and were like, yeah, we have to do this.
So tell us that story. So when did it hit you that this was going to be a major cash problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it was a learning curve, like all throughout my experience at HigherDose, because operating our retail locations, we sold packages, right? So we actually had cash coming in advance. We didn't have any inventory. And then when we shifted to product, it was this whole other mindset shift of like, oh wow, we need to take on a lot of debt. We might not be able to sell that inventory for 6 to 9 months. So, our cash flow, situation becomes very important to monitor, like especially right before the holidays, right? When you have this huge inventory build, you haven't sold the holiday product yet. Cash flow planning gets really tight on the D2C side. And then with retail, it becomes even more interesting because, forecasting becomes really important. You want to like get the forecast right because you don't want to, sell out and have empty shelves, but then you don't want to buy too much and then you have all your cash tied up in inventory. So I think it pushed us to get better at forecasting, and it pushed us to negotiate better terms with our suppliers, right? Because if, Sephora's placing an order, we have to place that order with our manufacturer, 3 to 4 months before. And then Sephora might not pay us for 30 or 60 days, after receiving the product. So I think that pushed us, like I said, for better terms with our suppliers, putting, smaller deposits down, kind of pitching them on seeing, the whole growth story so that they'd give us more flexible terms too.
And are you still funding this entirely through debt at this point?
Yep.
Wow. And how was your cash flow planning at this point? I mean, Highbeam's all about this, right? We're starting to automate a lot of this work. But at that time, I'm assuming you're doing this all manually, week to week. It's probably, your assumptions are probably wildly inaccurate a lot of the time. How are you managing it?
Well, I think I personally drove our ops team crazy because I was always like, right, we're bootstrapped. We've got to do super lean inventory. And, then that would cause issues with like running out of stock or just put a lot of like pressure on our ops team and supply chain. It was like, we're financing this whole thing on debt, and we don't know, we think the holiday season's going to be great, but we don't know. So we don't want to overstock and that sort of thing. We've now shifted to like taking out more debt and having more of a buffer because we realized, the amount of operational headaches that it caused just being like super lean on inventory wasn't really worth like the slight cash flow buffer that we had. So we've gone the route of just kind of like extending our credit lines with our suppliers along with, taking out the working capital loans that we talked about.
Interesting. There's an expression in buying, you either buy too much or too little. Like it's never perfect. And it's an art of kind of figuring out when to push the inventory out or pull it forward. So you guys have now shifted from we'd rather be out of stock and have to scramble to make the retailer happy, then you've switched to the other way, which is we'd rather have a bit too much and be holding more debt on the books.
Yeah, we have. And especially with, products that are more of our hero products, like the sauna blanket, the infrared PEMF mat, red light face mask, red light hat. I think we feel more comfortable being long on those items because we know that there's demand and it'll sell eventually. I think where we've compromised is some of our more ancillary products, like some of our CPG line. We keep that inventory a little tighter just because it's a smaller part of our business. So we don't want as much of that, tying up our capital.
How do you plan? Do you plan at the financial dollar level or do you plan at the SKU level? Or both?
We mostly plan at the SKU level. We look at how product's selling and then we try and forecast where we think it's going. I think we still could probably get a little bit more refined in that area. We have a small finance team, but working with you guys and using your tools has certainly helped us refine that.
Tell me a little bit more about expanding your products. So you have the sauna blanket. It's a home run. I mean, why not just keep selling sauna blankets for the rest of the time?
Well, I think we realized that there was a lot of other wellness tech that we were passionate about that we thought was equally as great, if not better than the sauna blanket. And we wanted to bring that to people too. Like, for instance, the infrared PEMF mat, that was the second product we launched. We launched it at the end of 2020. And I think we priced it at over $1,000 at that time. And we sold out in 2 weeks, which I think is quite incredible for a product that, most people have never heard of at $1,000 price point. But I had a lot of conviction around it because I tried it a lot myself. And I also had dinner with a famous male biohacker, Ben Greenfield, a couple years before that. And I asked him, like, hey, if you could only pick like 2 or 3 wellness products that you really stand behind, what would they be? And he mentioned PEMF, and I hadn't heard about it at the time. So I think we got input from experts on products that really worked. We tried them ourselves. We thought they had legs, and so it was a combination of like products that we loved and wanted to bring to people, and also, because there is a lot of competition in the space. I think eventually products that we launch, some SKUs at least, have tended to get a little commoditized. So you might have, 2 or 3 years where you have a good run with the product, it's growing, you're making a lot of profit on it before there's just so much competition that the profit starts to thin down. And by that time, we want to have, other new and exciting products launched that people can buy and kind of stay ahead of the competition that way.
How many new products? I mean, you guys have how many SKUs, ballpark?
I think we have like 17 or 18 at this point. A lot of that's smaller CPG stuff, but we have like 6 or 7 main SKUs.
And how many are you launching a year?
It depends. I think our sweet spot is around 2 to 3 a year. We launched a few more than that last year, and I think that was a little bit much. So we're trying to stick with like 2 or 3 a year.
What made you determine it was a bit much?
I think you want to give a product room to breathe. You want to have time for the market to learn about it, understand it, give it proper attention, like have press around it, get it to the right influencers who are talking about it. And, oftentimes you're reaching out to the same press or the same influencers to promote your products. So if you're bombarding them with, we just launched this, I don't think they necessarily devote as much attention to like a ton of different products versus if you just, give them a digestible amount of products to like learn about and use and really stand behind. I think the message becomes more powerful.
And have you seen that where a product will start off slow and gain steam for you?
I feel like I usually have a sense for what's going to be a home run and what's going to be okay. Usually it does kind of follow the pattern that I think it will. I mean, I think certain SKUs that I wasn't quite sure how they would do because they were kind of a departure from what we'd launched in the past, like the microcurrent body sculptor. I think there's more education around it and it's more of like a skincare tool at a high price point. I wasn't sure how successful that would be, but it's been like a good middle ground product for us that has had like a pretty stable demand. So in some ways, like you never know. But one thing I will say right now is red light is very hot. And I think we've been pretty innovative with how we've launched our red light products. And we've just continued to see that category have a lot of momentum.
How much time until you say to yourself, it worked or it didn't work? Like when do you, like week one happens, sales are good, they're not good. You're probably not judging it much. But at what point do you say to yourself, okay, we have conclusive evidence, the buy worked, we put in all the market and entry we could, the buy either worked or it didn't, we're either going to replenish or we're not?
I'd say probably within the first 3 months. I mean, I think initial launch is a really good indicator for us because at this point we have such a big email list and such a loyal fan base and dedicated following that a lot of times, we'll put out a newsletter about the new product and we'll see it just hit really big where we're like, whoa. And then, like that one's going to be a winner. Then if we launch and the newsletter, interest is kind of mediocre, that's usually a sign like, okay, well, let's launch some paid social and see how it does. It really kind of tends to follow the trend that goes along with the email newsletter. So that's probably the biggest indicator for us, I would say.
At David's Tea, we used to have a sheet at the front of the store where they would come in and they'd fill out their email addresses. And everybody laughs when I say that now, but we got 1 million email addresses just from having a sheet at our store, manually filling it out, and then putting it into the POS, into our systems after that. Did you find that your stores, the 11 that you had, your centers, before, did they really help you build up that email list that helped accelerate your move into product?
Yeah, that was actually huge for us because what it allowed us to do is we had this, customer database already through our, spa locations. We had an email database from that. And we were able to take that data and put it into Facebook and create lookalike audiences. Versus if you're starting a product company from scratch, you don't know what your customer looks like, you're kind of maybe throwing spaghetti at the wall. We already had that customer data that gave us a leg up with paid media. So it ended up being a real benefit for us on the product side.
Katie, what's next for HigherDose? What keeps you up at night these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is it's tough to be a hardware company, or device company, however you want to phrase it. That's kind of the biggest pushback from investors that, our repeat purchase rate isn't as great as maybe like a supplements company. And I think we're always trying to look for ways to increase our repeat purchase rate. We've spent some time thinking about how to do that. One product that we launched recently, the red light shower head, which is just going gangbusters. It's super innovative. It's probably, one of my top 2 favorite HigherDose products, is helping us achieve that goal because it has a replenishment component where you have to, buy the filter every 3 months. So I think, what keeps me up is just making sure that we can keep coming up with products that have a replenishment component and increasing our repeat purchase rate because that just improves the financial profile so much and makes us so much more appealing for a potential, strategic partner or buyer at some point.
Would you ever go back? I mean, now that you mentioned being a first-time founder when this journey started, could you see yourself being anything but an entrepreneur?
I think now, some kind of flavor of entrepreneurship is in my blood at this point, right? I don't think it necessarily needs to look like a product business, but even, being a content creator is somewhat entrepreneurial, having clients that you work with whose products you believe in and help promote. I think I'll always just kind of like have my own portfolio of projects. I don't know that I would necessarily get a desk job in banking or insurance like I like in my previous life, but I do love the banking sector. I love you guys and your team. So, who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting. My definition used to be quite narrow for what entrepreneurship was, and as I've gotten older, I've realized, you can be an entrepreneur within many different contexts, and it truly is. I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious to hear how you define it. I always think of it as, you're able to create something from nothing.
That's a good definition. Yeah, I think it's, you know, along the lines of you're kind of like charting your own economic path, right? Like you're creating your own opportunities for pursuing sources of income and cash flow, whether that's through selling a physical product, a digital product, or working on books or doing your own YouTube channel. I think it's just being creative about ways to generate income where you're not necessarily just working for someone else.
What do you think the hardest part about entrepreneurship is that you wish someone had told you, before you started out on your journey?
I think all the hats that you have to wear can get, really it can be a lot for especially for a front facing founder with a small team and limited resources. I feel like at a certain point I was doing every job at the company. I even started off working the front desk, and like you have to go from a really intense third round of diligence in-person 8-hour meeting with investors to the next day you're, filming a show for Entrepreneur, and then you're, having an HR meeting with someone that you have to let go of. And I think mentally wearing all those hats and kind of having to shift your where your head's at all throughout the day can be really tough. So I think if I were to do it again, I would probably be more discerning about how I focused my bandwidth.
Did you ever have a coach?
Our investor group had us work with a coach in the early days. I think a lot of it is just trial and error, right? Like learning by doing, and then kind of like listening to people that have done it before and have been successful. Like a startup that I worked for called Tough Mudder, the founder is a pretty well-known entrepreneur, Will Dean, and he had the whole company read Harvard Business School case studies and then kind of discuss them as sort of like an extracurricular that we would do. And he had us read a lot of books on business, like The Lean Startup, which was very influential for me. So I think in my opinion, you don't necessarily need formal coaching, but just, listening to people that have done it before, learning from them, whether it's through podcasts or books or, maybe like a kind of just if they're a friend of yours and getting casual advice, that really helped me out.
Katie, we always end with a quick lightning round. You've been super generous with your time. Appreciate it. What's one thing wellness founders don't worry about enough?
I would say probably sustainable unit economics, right? Think like raising too much money and not being scrappy enough and not making sure that, you're cash flow positive right out of the gate.
What's a piece of founder advice you completely disagree with?
That you need to raise tons of VC money. We didn't do it and we're better off for it now.
What's a decision you made too slowly?
I think building out an executive team, I think it would have probably eliminated a lot of headaches if we would have searched for good executives and done that earlier on.
Interesting. And why didn't you do that?
I think part of it was just being new to building a product business and not super sophisticated. So I don't think we fully realized, for instance, how much having like a great COO op supply chain person could really tip the needle, and like someone that like really knows how to negotiate with suppliers. I think we just didn't know what we didn't know. But bringing on, a couple people like that, like our COO in particular, was a real game changer for us. So something I wish we would have done earlier.
Finish this sentence. Every founder building something new should
make sure they're passionate about it, because there's going to be bumps along the road. So you got to love what you're doing.
Amazing. Katie, thank you so much. Some serious wisdom in this episode, and really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, David. Always fun chatting with you.